What's up, everyone? We're back for another episode of Locked On Bucks. And as you can see right here, if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to be talking a little bit of Bucks and Warriors. Milwaukee is afforded this rare luxury of 2 nights off. You don't get that every day in the NBA. So we're going to catch up with everything that's going on with Golden State. It's been a relatively big week for the Golden State Warriors. So we're going to touch on that, then look ahead to Thursday night's game in Milwaukee. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show daily and also find my work over at ESPN. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Check out prizepicks.com. Use the promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And I mentioned it is a little bit of crossover action on today's podcast. Cyrus Saatsaz, have I got that right, from Locked On Warriors? I asked you before. I was a little bit nervous about it. The last thing I want to do is be offending a guest in the first 30 seconds. No. How are we doing?
No, you're great, man. Look, in the United States, there's, I think, 2 or 3 people with that last name. My dad, my sister, and myself, and my sister got married, so I think there's only 2 of us. Dude, people butcher that name all the time. You actually nailed it perfectly. So thank you, and it's such a pleasure being on the show with you.
What is the background of that name, by the way?
My dad's Persian, so but the funnier thing is, so I've been in the media for working in the media for over 20 years now. And you have no idea how many jobs I've lost because of this name, right? Because in the early days of the media, like, such ostentatious things like a name and a pronunciation mattered in terms of getting hired. And then I only found out like a year ago that my grandfather, who I never met, he passed away when my dad was like 15, changed his last name to the name I have. And so all this like loyalty and commitment to keeping it real was for nothing, because apparently this is a new last name. But at this point, I'm 43 years old, so I'll stick with it. But yeah, that's the story.
We have Giannis Antetokounmpo. We have Sandro Mamukelashvili. We had Yorgos Kalaitzakis earlier this season. So we love it. First of all, what some people may say is a difficult surname to pronounce. Not in this area. So we're totally fine with that.
Nice.
Let's talk Warriors, and let's ask the most obvious question first of all. Just as someone who covers the team that gets to watch what's going on with this franchise all season long, can you just describe to us the night that you guys got to have a couple of nights back here with Klay Thompson returning to the floor, looking very much like Klay, I would have to say, but the sideshow and everything that went along with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was efficient Klay. I think he met expectations and then some. I mean, 20 minutes of play, 17 points for a man who's been out for 941 days is exemplary in my opinion. And yeah, I want to give a shout out to another podcast I host, the Rick Barry Show, and my compadre for that program, Hall of Famer Rick Barry. He was enthusiastically pleased with Klay Thompson's performance. I got feedback from him right away, and we covered it in detail. But yeah, so look, Dub Nation is ecstatic. Before the game, the Warriors, I think, were tied for the best record in the NBA, or maybe they were a half game back of the Suns without Klay Thompson. They still don't have James Wiseman yet. So the fact that whereas other teams might be making moves to try to improve on their roster. And by the way, we can talk about anything you want, by the way. I'm totally fair game. But so we can talk about the Bucks. I'd love to talk about your team, because in my opinion, the Bucks are the only real threat to the Warriors. Your team does concern me. But with Dub Nation and here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I mean, Klay Thompson is such a popular figure. Never mind just here. I mean, I felt like for one night, like NBA Twitter and the global NBA fandom all came together because Klay Thompson, for whatever reason, is an immensely popular figure. He's not divisive for some reason. Like, regardless of who your team is, people just like Klay. And so here in the Bay Area, I mean, we were just thrilled to finally see him back. He's an incredibly likable individual. We all have seen what he's gone through, again, with these 2 horrific injuries. I don't know if there's any other story like his for a player coming back from back-to-back horrific leg injuries, like a torn ACL and then a torn Achilles. So to see that performance, to see that dunk, and I feel like all of Dub Nation kind of held their breaths when he did that. Like, oh my S-bomb, like please don't tear something from jumping like that. But he came out fine from that. And then when he started hitting the threes, I think that's when we all knew everything was good. And I'll end it with this. And I'm sorry if I'm being very talkative here. And from my personal opinion, with everything that I think we as human beings have gone through globally, obviously the pandemic. When you think about the last time Klay Thompson was on the court, Anthony Davis was still with the Pelicans. Kobe Bryant was still with us. And times have changed. And in my opinion, these are very hard times. So to see Klay Thompson on that court, even if it was just for a brief moment, things felt normal. Like it actually felt like there was a sense of nostalgia there, and I took comfort in that. I think a lot of other people took comfort in that. And it was just great to see Klay Thompson back on the floor playing.
It's interesting that you mentioned the 2 injuries that he's had, because I was going for a walk this morning and I was listening to just different podcasts, and they were all talking about Klay and talking about everything that's happened the last 2 days. And Milwaukee fans, similar to Golden State fans, have seen the attempted reemergence of Boogie Cousins, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
Now clearly very different body types, clearly very different players. And I think the expectation that someone of Boogie Cousins' size, that can he return after those injuries, I would say the percentage chances are lower than they are for Klay Thompson. But nonetheless, we've seen how it just physically has just impacted him. And Boogie Cousins, the person, looks in great shape, but when you see him move, he's just not the same. So I thought that, to me, as you already pointed to, the dunk, but everything about it, he looked explosive. He looked fantastic. I want to ask in general about the love fest coming back for the Warriors this year. And this is from an outsider's perspective. I tweeted about this a few weeks ago, that it feels like because the Warriors had those 2 seasons down, and maybe part of it is the fact that Kevin Durant isn't there anymore, but the Warriors' fatigue appears to be over, and everyone seems to be just enjoying watching them play basketball again. Do you feel that? What's your sense with why the Warriors seem to be this must-watch viewing again?
Well, they're an entertaining brand of ball, right? And first of all, before we get into that, DeMarcus Cousins is interesting because Steve Kerr had a press conference on Saturday to informally announce Klay Thompson's comeback. And I actually got a question in there for the press conference, and I asked Steve about DeMarcus Cousins. Everybody's just asking about Klay, and I actually wanted to know, how is James Wiseman doing? Because it's been like 9-10 months. We still haven't seen him yet. So I wanted an update on him, but I also asked, would the team be interested in a player out there like DeMarcus Cousins? I was a little surprised why your team waived him, and I'd love to get your insights on that. But Steve Kerr shut that down fast. He was like, I'm not answering personnel questions. That's Bob Myers' department. I didn't say this, but I was like, that's funny, because with Gary Payton II, you announced pretty quickly he's gonna get that guaranteed deal.
Right.
Yeah, so that was like a subtle way of saying there's no chance in hell. And I've heard some weird stories that Kerr and Cousins didn't have the greatest relationships. But anyway, so going back to the Warriors' style of ball, it's just entertaining. I mean, Stephen Curry, as we all know, has changed this brand tremendously, just because it's a relatability thing. I think when you look at a player like LeBron, I can't relate. I'm 5'10". I played basketball most of my life, but I can't relate to his style of ball. Like, I can't be a point guard and then a center in the next breath slamming the ball down. I can be like Stephen Curry, even though he's 6'3", and it's still in basketball world that's small, but in the real world that's still very tall. But nonetheless, his style of play is relatable. And that's why you see so many kids now out there shooting threes to the disdain of probably their coaches. But so and the ball movement is beautiful basketball. If you're a purist of the game, that part of it you do love. There's a tremendous lack of ego. This team was successful before Durant. I'm a strong proponent, and I constantly make the argument they didn't need him to be the great team they are. They did win a championship without him. They did win 73 games without him. They would have been back-to-back champions without him if the league decided not to suspend Draymond Green. That's a whole other discussion. So this is a team that is not reliant on big stars to carry the day. I know Stephen Curry is a huge star. I know Draymond Green and Klay Thompson are stars, but they're not stars in your typical sense of the word, where they're egotistical, right? They crave attention. They dress, and they're all about fashion and style. These are individuals that are humble, that play because they actually love the sport, and you see that on the court. That style and that energy is attractive. It's likable. It's where again they're the number one team in the NBA in assists. So they love to share the ball. None of the players really love to have the limelight or attention. And so between the offensive game where they're, until recently at least, they were putting up points, and the shooting and the likability of the Splash Brothers, I think that 2-year hiatus was like the perfect amount of time for everyone's palates to kind of just like digest the Warriors. It's like, okay, we've gone 2 years, we went through the bubble, and then the Bucks wanted. But I think, by the way, I think Giannis is a very likable player as well. I really think the Warriors and Bucks are the two best and two most likable teams. But they're back and they're playing the same brand of ball, and I think the fact that they're doing this without Kevin Durant is kind of telling people like, hey, this works without a mega superstar who needs to play that ISO type ball and have the ball all the time. And I just think that style of ball is what people enjoy the most. But that's just my opinion on that. So
yeah, the fact that they were so damn good and then they got Kevin Durant is why everyone was so pissed off. That's the reason. That's the reason why. But hey, one of the stats that I heard that I found pretty interesting, or just one of the facts, I guess, not really a stats, but was that Klay Thompson played his first game with Jordan Poole the other night, and there's a bunch of guys in this roster turnover has been huge. Also, his first game in Chase Center. But speaking of Jordan Poole, he's an interesting player when it comes to Prize Picks, who we've been talking about Prize Picks for a while here. It's the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. Prize Picks offers more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers all the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game, which now Jordan Poole is going to go to the bench most likely if Klay Thompson stays in the lineup, but still could be an attractive option at Prize Picks where they've got every prop you could think of: points, assists, rebounds, threes made, etc. there. So just use the promo code NBA and you'll receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks allows mixed sport entries as well. So you're running out of time with NFL, but you've got NFL, NBA, NHL. You can mix them all together and have some fun there. So just go to prizepicks.com today, use the promo code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Now, as we continue, and we will get to some Buck stuff, but as we continue this chat here, just looking at the numbers, and you mentioned recently there's been some offensive struggles, I guess, for the Warriors. Certainly for Steph, you look at his efficiency numbers, and it's kind of bizarre looking at where he's at from an efficiency perspective, because it does feel like every 3 nights he's still going absolutely ballistic. But the fact that they're the number one defense, and you speak about guys they're going to get back, whether it's Wiseman, obviously Klay Thompson, neither of those guys are going to hurt this team defensively, but in the recent slump, they're 11th. So how scared should everyone be, I guess, is the question, because everything to me, when I look at all the numbers, when I look at the individual stuff, the team stuff, it's setting up for this to, again, be a pretty damn special Warriors roster, lineup, team, however you want to describe it.
Yeah. My prediction, I predicted the Warriors to win the whole thing way before the season started, just because as someone who's been following this team incessantly and passionately for how many years, for like 30 something years now. I don't think it takes a basketball savant to realize the greatness of Stephen Curry. Yes, the offense is struggling recently, and that's largely because A, Stephen Curry himself has not been as efficient as normal. And then B, the entire rest of the team, for some reason, just has forgotten how to shoot the 3-point shot. And that's really the basis of the Warriors offense. If that 3-point shot isn't falling, they don't have a lot of plan Bs. And so that's where that amazing defense comes into play. Stephen Curry historically struggles in December and January. Why? I don't know. And that's a question next time I interview him.
What's going on here? Too much eating over the holiday period? What's up?
I don't know. It's a great question. My theory, and I will ask him this at some point, but my theory is that when it comes to the long game, the Warriors are brilliant. And they plan it out. They see June as a target. They don't see like April as a target, right? So in my opinion, I think the team paces themselves both mentally and physically, and they just aren't as aggressive this time of year. I could be wrong. This is just my guess. But come February, March, April, Steph picks it up, and I think his numbers will improve. There is no panic button right now. This week for the Warriors is insanely difficult. They play the Grizzlies. They're playing them right now, actually. And so I'm going to watch that game as soon as we're done. And then they play a back-to-back with your team, the Bucks, and the Bulls. I mean, I think they're 1-2 in the East or somewhere in there with the Nets, right? That's gnarly. Like, that's it. So you're not going to see all their players play in the back-to-back. I know they already said Klay Thompson is not going to do the back-to-back. Andre Iguodala, who's still giving them important minutes, is not going to be there for the back-to-backs this year. And then Stephen Curry, I'm starting to wonder if they're going to pull the reins a little bit on him for back-to-backs. So I'm hoping, my guess is because the Bucks are the first game of that back-to-back, and they played the Bulls earlier this year and blew them out. So I think they're going to bring all their players for your team, because the Warriors, if there's one thing they love to do, is play psychological games during the regular season. Those Suns games that they dominated and gave their 100% for a reason. They like sending messages to teams that, look, if we see you in the postseason, we want you to remember who we are and what we did to you, right? We're going to affect your confidence tonight. So I think the Bucks game is they are going to show up. Like, you're going to see their best players, with the exception of probably Draymond Green, who has a concerning calf tightness injury that we don't know much more about right now. But I'm concerned just because Draymond Green, to me, is one of the toughest players in the NBA. He never misses big games. And if you watch that Klay Thompson game, he played the first possession just to be on the floor with Klay, and then he came off, which, by the way, on a side note, was a very selfless act, because Draymond Green's stats suffered tremendously for that. All of his average seconds, all he got was 1 foul, no points, no rebounds, no assists. So his stats really struggled and plummeted from that one appearance, but he didn't care. He just wanted to be on the court with Klay. But anyway, so going back to the Warriors and this time of year and how they're doing, there's no panic button. I think Steph's going to be fine. I do worry about your team, just because historically the Bucks have always played the Warriors great. Even in that 2015-16 season where the Warriors won 73 games, I think they started that season 24-0, and it was your Bucks who ended that streak. And they've always played them tough. I don't know why that is, but the Milwaukee Bucks to me are the only real threat to the Warriors. I don't see anyone in the West being a legitimate threat, unless Kawhi Leonard comes back 100%. Then that's a whole different discussion with the Clippers. But otherwise, your team is it. And Bucks fans who are watching this, like, Dub Nation is aware. Like, we're very aware that the Bucks are the world champions. We're very aware that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the NBA and is a virtually unstoppable force. We're very aware that Chris Middleton is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. We're very aware that Drew Holiday can play stout defense, is going to give either Steph or Klay trouble, but the good news is hopefully we'll wear him down and limit him offensively because of that. But nonetheless, I mean, no, we're the expectations are very high. And what I'm hoping for, and I think what Dub Nation is hoping for, is that 10, 15 years from now, when we look back on this era, that those 2 years that they took a break will just be a blip that no one even remembers about anymore. And hopefully, I'm selfishly hoping that the Warriors win 2 or 3 more championships. But your team's in the way, and I refuse to disrespect the Bucks, because championship experience matters. Like that, winning that title last year and imprinting that memory in every one of their heads in terms of how to do this, how hard it is to get to this point, is not forgotten. And it's hard to take down a champ. And if they mean the finals, and I think they will, I'm stoked for that. Yeah, so that's my thoughts on the Warriors.
So if you are talking about those 2015, 2016 seasons, I mean, the reason the Bucks gave you trouble is because they had the kryptonite. They had Michael Carter-Williams, they had Greg Monroe, and the Warriors couldn't do anything about it. That's why they were able to stay in those matchups. By the way, before we move on, did you hear or read about all this? And I don't gamble myself personally, but did you hear about all these guys that made bank on the Draymond Green, just betting the under on all these props?
No. Enlighten me. And by the way, Prize Picks is a sponsor of both our shows, and it's a fun website. So you're saying people just clean house?
Yeah, I'm not sure it was Prize Picks, but I was reading or listening to the one guy in particular bet like $100 and made like 20 grand or something because he just put them all together. He must have known he wasn't going to play or something, went under, and just cashed out. It's just like, hey, shout out to that guy. If you get the inside
well,
word.
I'll say this. My Locked On Warriors compadre, Dieter Kurtenbach, he was the only people who knew Draymond wasn't going to play were at the arena because he pulled that calf during warmups. And that's a way to beat the bookies. I mean, it's a believable story. I mean, if I was there and I saw that, I would immediately get on my phone and make those bets. So all I can say is congrats to them. I mean, bravo. Yeah. No, I haven't heard about that though. But,
I agree. I don't think that I'm making it up. But speaking of sponsors of the show, we should talk about Built Bar, which is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. You said yes. It sounds like you're a fan of Built Bar as well. Cookies
and cream all day, every day. And the fact that they have half the calories of a candy bar. They have, I think, 1/8 of the sugar that a candy bar has. Built Bar, dude, it's amazing. Have you tried it?
I have. One of the most contentious flavors we have on this show that hosts either love or they hate, but it always is a point of, like I said, contention is the coconut. How do you feel about coconut?
I haven't had coconut, so but now I'm interested. I will try next time we talk. I'll give you an update on that.
All right, I'm a fan. There are some people that aren't a fan, but as Sarah says, I mean, these bars, I should say, don't cost too many bills. I should say that, but they are very healthy for you, which is the best part about it, as well as they taste good. So just use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off at built.com. That's LOCKED15, the promo code at built.com, and you'll get 15% off. And we were just talking about betting. But BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as they continue their march towards the playoffs in the NFL and the NBA and NHL as they continue to roll on as well. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all your best sports wagering action for 2022. Use the promo code Locked On and you'll get 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit if you sign up today. Like I said, football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, whatever sport it is, BetOnline has you covered. It's the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So you mentioned the Bucks. Is there any curiosity you have about this franchise? I do think that the point you made about the team learning how to win, however you want to describe it, having that playoff experience is real, because last year we discussed a lot. You talk about the Warriors pacing themselves through the regular season. The Bucks really took this attitude last regular season, but we were very skeptical about it because we knew that mentally it's still very hard when you're carrying the weight of being a really good regular season team for multiple years and not getting the job done. Now they've done that. There seems to be an even added layer of calm, relaxation around this team. They don't stress too much whether they lose games, win games. But what is it about the Bucks that, outside of the obvious, the Giannis, that makes you think that this team is the best in the East? Because the East also is stronger than Chicago, Brooklyn, a number of teams that are trying to be around that mix.
Yeah, I take tremendous I place tremendous value in chemistry. And I really think that is the number one variable for the Warriors, is that when it comes to chemistry, they don't really care night in, night out who's scoring the most points. They don't care who's getting the limelight. The only glory they're seeking is as a team, not as individuals. And that's what basketball is. It's easy for people to forget that this is a team sport. And if you're working in a cohesive manner with great coaching and with players who buy into a system, your defense will show as a result of that, because great defense starts with a team collective effort. Rebounding will show for that. The Warriors don't have a natural center on their roster. Their tallest player is 6'9", yet they're consistently keeping up with other teams, if not out-rebounding them. And I think when it comes to the Bucks, that's a similar formula of success there. Coach Bud is I still have questions about him. I don't know how the Bucks feel about him as a whole. I think it's obvious that he saved his job by winning the championship. But when you look at Giannis, when you look at Middleton, I know they brought Drew Holiday in, but there seems to be a very similar ego-less environment and attitude with the Bucks team. That's what I see. I don't see anybody on that team thinking about himself. I don't see selfishness. I don't see any of the mindset that represents an inflated ego. This is a team that had one goal, and that was collectively to win a championship, and they did that. I mean, and then you look at Giannis, right? I mean, his body of work, when all said and done, he's basically Shaquille O'Neal. Only he can dribble, and sometimes he has an outside shot. The Bucks, and they play great defense. And you have to give Coach Bud some credit. You'd have to tell me what happened with DeMarcus Cousins there, because I do think still has something to give in this game. And I'm a little surprised he didn't fit in with you guys. But if Lopez comes back, which seems to be the indication is going to be later in the year, I really think the Bucks are going to win this whole thing. I'm not win the East. I don't want to say the whole thing. I don't see the Nets as a threat. To me, the Nets are a team with three superstars who need someone else to carry the team. None of those guys can carry it on their own. That's just how I feel about it based on my personal observations. The Bulls, to me, are a great team. They really are, but I just don't think they're a championship level team. I think you guys got the East. I really think I'm very confident in this. I should go on betonline.ag. I unfortunately just lost all my money a few weeks ago betting on the Warriors. So I got to deposit more in my account, but I really should place that bet because I feel very confident it's going to be Warriors Bucks. And I don't feel like I don't have the same confidence of the Warriors winning the West that I do have in them beating the Bucks. Just because your team has that championship experience. Giannis, I don't know. I mean, Draymond's the one that's going to be covering him, but I don't know if anyone can really just stop Giannis. He's such an unstoppable force. And then Middleton, I think, is really the most important player from that championship group in terms of gaining that championship experience. Because when he has the confidence, he's lethal. It's a travesty to me how, like, if you look at his Twitter account, he has like I think 50,000 followers or 40, or like I looked at it a while ago, he had like 16. Like, he is not a popular figure, which is shocking to me given how good he is, right? I mean, he's grossly underrated in my opinion. And then Drew Holiday, I still continually wonder why the Pelicans gave him up for like pretty much nothing. I know you gave up some talent for him, like Bledsoe and draft picks, but if I'm right, but I like your team. I don't know what else to say about it except that to me in the Eastern Conference, the Bucks are the overwhelming favorite. Just from my long history of watching basketball since I was like 8 years old and watching it really closely, I can tell you that the Bucks are a legitimate team. Like they don't have flaws. They have outside shooting. They have defense. They got size. And when it comes down to it, again, yeah, I really think it's going to be Warriors Bucks when all said and done. I mean, how are you feeling about the West? I would love your take on that. Like, do you think the Warriors are the favorites, or does Phoenix or Utah, or I'm not going to say the Lakers at all, but and they're done in my opinion. But do you think is there a threat to the Warriors from your opinion, from your side?
No, I think there's 4 teams, 2 teams from each conference that I could see. Again, the Clippers are a little bit of a wild card with Kawhi. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
but I like Golden State and Phoenix. You have to respect. I mean, they were 2-zip up in the finals. You know what I mean? I mean, they were very, very close. And then in the East, we'll see what happens with the Nets moving forward. It's obviously a weird situation, but I have those 4 teams probably at the top. The one thing I will say before we wrap this up, just the Boogie Cousins stuff. It is interesting. I mean, this was, I would have to say, a pretty unpopular decision by the Bucks to cut Boogie. It obviously came on the deadline where they had to make a decision for the rest of the season. Some fans will say that they were annoyed because they feel like this is a money-saving move. There will be other fans that genuinely believe that he is a guy that could play during the playoffs. I don't necessarily agree with that. He was fantastic when he was here. You can put him in second units. He can still offensively put up points, get you rebounds. I didn't see him as a guy that you were going to be able to play in the postseason. So I personally didn't have an issue with it. And interesting, you mentioned Steve Kerr. There's nothing that's been reported. I'm not sure what the relationship was like with Bud. That's all I'll say. I don't know.
Interesting. I mean, if you got to get along with your coaches, I mean, that'll sabotage your career right there. I do want to add to you, you brought up Jordan Poole a little earlier. Andre Iguodala last week called him the $20 million sixth man, right? If he can just be a little more consistent, he's going to be a star in this game. His biggest issue remains shot selection. Like sometimes he thinks he's Stephen Curry and he's heaving up 35-footers. He should not be doing that. If and when he simplifies his game regularly, I think you're going to get a 20 points a night scoring average from him. I mean, the Warriors' depth is incredible. I mean, we have 2 rookies that we don't rely on at all, who are both lottery picks. Who might be contributing come playoff time. And I'm referring to Jonathan Kuminga and to a lesser extent Moses Moody. I don't know the Bucks depth personally, but to me, like the Eastern Conference, and I know fans of the Bucks might not like hearing this just for superstitious reasons, but I really think the Bucks have it. Like, I do not see the Nets as a threat at all. To me, they're such a top-heavy team with superstars, but none of those superstars have ever carried a team themselves to a championship. And I think having mental toughness is important, and that's something that a player like Giannis has. That's something a player like Stephen Curry has. I don't view the Suns as a serious threat only because Steph has owned Chris Paul throughout nearly their entire career, save for one playoff series in 2014. And that psychological edge is important. Mental toughness is just not something you can teach, right? You're either born with it or you're not. And Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green for the Warriors, Giannis, Middleton, Drew Holiday for the Bucks. Like to me, that is the variable, the secret attribute or the underrated attribute that not many people talk about, that all these 6 players have as the leaders of their team. And when they play each other in the finals, and I think that's going to happen, it's going to be exciting. That's going to be a 7-game series, I think. I don't think either team's going to dominate the other. But that's what I see, man. I think our teams are the ones to beat, and I hope they meet in the finals.
I'm ready for another postseason run of podcasting. That's for sure. By the way, Jordan Poole, Rufus King High School product in Milwaukee. So lots of our listeners, big fans of Jordan Poole.
Oh, there you go.
I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that. Don't forget to check out the Locked On Bets podcast. Jeez, we've been talking a lot about betting here, but check it out. Your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling.
It's our boy Q. It's our boy Q.
Our boy Q.
We're all friends with Q now.
Yeah, that's true. That is a good point. Cyrus, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate it. Just based on what you've said about the Milwaukee Bucks, very welcome back. I'm sure the reviews will be overwhelmingly positive, which is what we love.
Oh, and it's going to be your turn to come. No, let's do this regularly, man. I've traveled the world, and for some reason, you Aussies just understand what is important in life. You get it. Your attitude is perfect. It's a pleasure to meet you, Kane. And yeah, let's definitely do this again soon, man. It was a pleasure.
All right. As I mentioned, we're going to have Camille on the podcast tomorrow. She'll be back. We'll be looking ahead to this Warriors game a little bit further. We'll potentially have some updates with availability. So we're going to get into that. But for now, for Cyrus, for myself, we'll leave it there. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.